The air in the boardroom is thick, suffocating, smelling of old money and fear. 20 floors below, the city hums unaware. I stand at the head of the polished table, a stack of documents before me. Across from me sits Robert, my old boss. His face, usually a mask of corporate composure, is pale, almost gray. His eyes dart between me and the papers. Beside him, young Michael, the nephew. He fidgets, slicked back hair, expensive suit, looking utterly lost. The board members are silent, their gazes fixed on me, then Robert, then the papers again. This is it. The culmination. Years boiled down to this one breath held in a room designed for power. My heart beats a steady, relentless rhythm against my ribs. It feels like a drum, marking time, counting down to an explosion. The silence stretches, taut as a wire. Let me know where you're watching from and what time it is. And if you haven't already, please subscribe. It helps me more than you know, allowing me to share these moments with you. Just a few years ago, this room felt like the summit. This company, Sterling Corp., was my world. I was a senior executive, had climbed the ladder rung by painstaking rung. I believed in what we did, poured myself into the work. Late nights, early mornings, sacrificing weekends, relationships, sleep. It felt worth it. I was good at my job. The best, if I'm being honest. I knew the market, I knew our clients, I knew how to build teams and deliver results. I had ideas, big ones, about where we could go, how we could innovate, stay ahead of the curve. I thought I was indispensable. Naive, isn't it? The world has a funny way of reminding you just how small you are, how quickly the ground can disappear beneath your feet. My office was on the 18th floor. A corner office, a reward for hitting targets nobody else thought were possible. The view stretched out over the financial district, a concrete and glass ocean. It felt like I was steering a ship on those waters. I loved the hum of the office, the controlled chaos, the late-night glow from the computer screens. I had a team I trusted, people I'd mentored, who believed in my vision for our division. We were a unit of force. I lived and breathed Sterling Corporation. My life was simple. Work, a small apartment downtown, maybe a quiet dinner with a friend or two on a rare free night. My desire was simple too. Build something great, leave a mark, keep climbing, keep proving I could handle more, achieve more. Security, success, the respect of my peers. That was the goal. It felt within reach. Then came the meeting. Robert's office. The 20th floor. His door was always open for me. We had a good rapport, or so I thought. He valued my input, listened to my proposals, gave me room to run. I saw him as a mentor, a supporter. I walked in that day, expecting a standard quarterly review, maybe a discussion about the next fiscal year's strategy. The air felt different. Tighter. Robert sat behind his massive mahogany desk, a stack of files neatly arranged. Beside him, a young man I didn't recognize. Robert gestured for me to sit. His usual warm smile wasn't there. He cleared his throat. "Have a seat," his voice was clipped. I sat, a prickle of unease starting in my gut. "Everything all right, Robert?" He didn't look at me. He looked at the young man. "This is Michael, my nephew." Michael gave a nervous, awkward nod. "Michael just graduated," Robert continued, his gaze still fixed somewhere past my shoulder. "He's looking to get started in the industry. I've decided to bring him on." Okay, I thought. A new hire. Maybe an assistant role? Good kid, I'm sure. I'd trained plenty of new grads. Then Robert finally looked at me. His eyes were cold, empty. "And I've decided to make some changes in the executive structure. Effective immediately, I'm moving you out of your current role. Michael will be taking over your division." The words hung in the air, absurd, impossible. My mind scrambled to process them. Moving me out? Michael, this kid, taking over my division? The division I built, the team I cultivated, the strategies I executed? It didn't make sense. It couldn't be real. "What?" The word was a choked whisper. "It's time for a change," Robert said, his voice flat, devoid of any warmth or explanation. "New blood. Fresh perspective. Michael needs a place to learn, and I believe this division under his leadership with some guidance we'll thrive. Guidance. From whom? From Robert? From some poor soul left in the division to pick up the pieces? My mind reeled. But
why?
What did I do? My performance has been stellar. We hit every target, exceeded projections. It's not about performance, Robert interrupted, his voice hardening. It's a business decision. A family matter. Your key card will be deactivated by the end of the day. Security will escort you to collect your personal effects. He stood up, signaling the conversation was over. Michael still sat there, wide-eyed, pale. He looked like he was about to throw up. Probably felt it too. I looked at Robert, the man I'd respected, the man who was supposed to have my back. The betrayal cut deeper than any words. It wasn't just losing my job, it was losing my place, my future, my identity within these walls. It was being tossed aside for someone who had done nothing, earned nothing, purely because of blood. Nepotism, raw and ugly, staring me in the face. Family matter, I repeated, the words tasting like ash. So, this is it? Everything I gave to this company.
Gone?
For your nephew? The company appreciates your contributions, Robert said, a hollow corporate platitude. We wish you the best in your future endeavors. Future endeavors. He made it sound like I was retiring, not being summarily executed from my career. My future endeavors were currently being flushed down the drain with whatever dignity I had left. I stood up, my legs feeling unsteady. I didn't look at Michael. I couldn't. My gaze stayed fixed on Robert. There was no anger yet, just a cold shock, a profound sense of violation. This wasn't just a professional setback, it felt like a personal attack. He hadn't just fired me, he had erased me. Replaced me with a blank slate, a placeholder who hadn't earned the right to tie his shoes in that division, let alone lead it. I walked out of his office, the door closing softly behind me, a quiet click that echoed like a gunshot in my ears. The walk back to my office on the 18th floor felt like walking through a dream, a nightmare. The familiar faces of my team, the hum of the computers, the view from the window, it all seemed unreal, seen through a distorted lens. I packed my personal items into a box, a few photos, a favorite mug, a plant I'd nurtured. Security arrived, 2 stoic figures. They watched me, their presence a physical manifestation of my sudden pariah status. I walked out of Sterling Corp that day, a box in my arms, my head held as high as I could manage, but inside, I was collapsing. The city lights I'd loved from my window now seemed to mock me, glittering in the distance as I stood on the street, unemployed, betrayed, and adrift. The days that followed blurred into a painful haze. Waking up without an office to go to, without a team to lead, without a purpose tied to Sterling Corporation. My apartment felt too quiet, too small. I applied for jobs. Submitted resumes, wrote cover letters, went on interviews. The corporate world, once a place of opportunity, now felt like a series of closed doors. Rejection emails piled up. Interviewers would look at my resume, ask about my time at Sterling, and there was always a hesitation when I explained why I left. Restructuring, I'd say, the life feeling hollow. Nobody wanted to hire the executive who was suddenly available. The whispers I knew would have started. Why did they really let her go? Was there something more? Robert and his nephew had not only taken my job, they had poisoned the well.
Doubt not at me.
Had I been naive to trust Robert? To believe my performance was enough? Was I not as good as I thought? The insecurity was a physical weight, crushing my chest. My savings dwindled faster than I'd anticipated. The job market was brutal. Every rejection chipped away at my confidence, leaving me raw and exposed. I started to believe maybe I wasn't cut out for it anymore. Maybe my time had passed. The future endeavors Robert had wished me seemed to be leading nowhere. Despair set in, cold and persistent. I remember sitting on a park bench one afternoon, watching people walk by, living their lives, going somewhere. I felt stuck, frozen. The shame was intense. I hadn't told many people what really happened. It was too humiliating. My family knew I'd left Sterling, but not the brutal truth, the arbitrary cruelty of it. I felt isolated, carrying the weight of my failure alone. It was during this low point, staring blankly at the pigeons pecking at crumbs, that a different kind of feeling began to stir. Beneath the despair, a hard, cold ember of anger started to glow. Anger at Robert, at Michael, at the unfairness of it all. And then, something else. A fierce, burning defiance. I wouldn't let them win. I wouldn't let this be my ending. This wasn't just about getting another job anymore. This was personal. The idea didn't come in a flash of inspiration. It was more like assembling scattered pieces. During my time at Sterling, I'd seen a gap in the market, a need that wasn't being met. A technology Sterling had dismissed as too risky, too niche. I'd even written a proposal for it, which Robert had politely but firmly rejected. Now, sitting on that bench, the idea resurfaced. What if I pursued it myself? What if I built what they wouldn't? It felt audacious, terrifying, and exhilarating all at once. Starting a company from scratch is like stepping off a cliff, hoping you'll sprout wings on the way down. I had savings, but not enough. I had the idea, but no product. I had the drive, but no team, no office, no infrastructure. It was just me, a laptop, and a burning conviction fueled by righteous fury and the need to prove them wrong. My small apartment became my office, my living room a makeshift boardroom. I spent weeks, months, diving deep into the technology, refining the concept, building a business plan. It was isolating work. The initial enthusiasm was quickly tempered by the sheer difficulty of it all. Finding funding was the first major hurdle. Pitching to investors was a brutal education in rejection. They liked the idea sometimes, but who was I? An executive fired from a major corporation with no startup experience? Red flag, they'd say, not out loud, but it was in their eyes. They wanted proof, traction, a team. I had none of that. It felt like being back on the job hunt, facing a different kind of closed door. I heard no so many times it started to lose its meaning. Each rejection was a fresh reminder of my starting point, of the hole I was digging myself out of. I remember one investor meeting particularly vividly. A prominent venture capitalist firm. I had landed the meeting through a connection, felt a sliver of hope. I gave my pitch, poured my passion into explaining the market need, the technology, the potential. The lead partner, a woman with sharp eyes and an even sharper tongue, listened patiently. When I finished, she leaned back. "It's an interesting concept," she said, "but you're a solo founder with no technical background trying to build a complex tech product. You have no team, no seed funding yet, and frankly, your recent departure from Sterling Corp raises questions we're not comfortable with." She paused, her gaze piercing. "Why should we risk our money on someone who couldn't even hold onto their executive position?" The casual cruelty of the question, the dismissal of my entire career at Sterling based on Robert's actions, stung deeply. It was a direct hit on the wound that hadn't healed. I left that meeting feeling lower than I had since the day I was fired. The challenges multiplied. I needed technical expertise I didn't possess. I needed to build a prototype, test the market, find beta users. My savings were running dangerously low. There were nights I ate instant noodles for dinner, staring at spreadsheets, feeling utterly overwhelmed. The dream felt impossibly far away. Doubt returned, a cold, unwelcome guest. Was I crazy? Was this just an elaborate form of self-destruction fueled by bitterness? But then, small victories started to appear. I found a freelance developer, incredibly talented, who believed in the idea enough to work for deferred payment. We built a rudimentary prototype. I used my old network, carefully, cautiously, to find potential beta users. To my surprise, they were interested. The gap I had identified was real. Their feedback was invaluable. We iterated, improved the product. One afternoon, scrolling through LinkedIn, I saw a post from Michael.
A promotion.
He was now senior director, the title I'd held. The accompanying photo showed him smiling, standing next to Robert at some corporate event. They looked happy, successful. It was a gut punch. A fresh wave of anger, hot and volatile, surged through me. They were thriving in the space I had created, while I was fighting tooth and nail in my cramped apartment, barely scraping by. That photo, that moment, was a catalyst. It solidified the shift that had been slowly building. This wasn't just about building a successful business anymore. It was about building something so undeniably, spectacularly successful that it would dwarf Sterling Corporation. It wasn't just about proving them wrong, it was about rendering them irrelevant. The anger became fuel, a relentless engine driving me forward. I stopped focusing on just surviving and started focusing on winning. Truly, unequivocally winning. I pivoted my approach to funding. Instead of pitching to large VCs who saw me as a risk, I focused on angel investors, individuals who were often more willing to take chances on unconventional founders and disruptive ideas. I refined my pitch, leaning into the narrative of being an industry insider who saw the future Sterling missed, driven by a fierce passion born from adversity. It resonated with some. Slowly, painfully, I started piecing together small amounts of funding. Enough to hire one full-time developer, then another. Enough to rent a tiny, bare-bones office space, a far cry from the 18th floor, but it was mine. We worked relentlessly. Days blurred into nights. Sleep became a luxury. We faced technical glitches, market resistance, moments where the product seemed to break down completely. There was one particularly rough week where our main server crashed, taking days to restore, losing valuable user data. It felt like a death blow. Money was tighter than ever, morale was low. My developers looked exhausted. I felt like I was failing them. I stood in our small office late one night, the city lights a blurry smear outside the window, feeling the familiar weight of despair settling back in. All this work, all this sacrifice, and for what? To crash and burn just like the server. I called the lead angel investor who had put the most faith in me. I explained the situation, the severity of the setback. I expected disappointment, maybe even withdrawal of their support. Instead, he listened, asked calm, probing questions. Then he said, "Setbacks happen. It's how you handle them that matters. What's the plan?" His belief, at that moment when mine was wavering, was the lifeline I needed. It was a turning point. I hung up the phone, looked at the messy whiteboard covered in error codes, and felt a surge of determination. We wouldn't be defeated. We would fix this. We would learn from it. We would come back stronger. We worked around the clock. We rebuilt the server infrastructure, implemented more robust backup systems, personally reached out to affected users, apologizing, offering compensation, rebuilding trust. It was a grueling, humbling process, but we did it. And in the process, the team gelled. We learned to rely on each other, to fight through adversity together. That crisis, which felt like the end, became the crucible that forged us into a resilient unit. From there, things began to accelerate. The product, once stable, started to gain traction. Word spread. More users signed up. We started getting media attention. Investors who had previously rejected me started calling back. The market was validating my vision. We raised a Series A round, then a Series B. We grew the team, moved to a slightly larger, though still modest, office. We were no longer just surviving, we were growing, thriving. The anger that had fueled me in the early days began to temper, replaced by a quiet confidence, a focus on building something lasting. But the memory of being cast out, of Robert and Michael in that photo, it never completely faded. It remained a sharp, cold reminder of why I started this journey. The decision to go public felt like the logical next step, yet also surreal. An IPO meant scaling massively, facing intense scrutiny, joining the big leagues. It also meant creating significant liquidity for my investors, my employees, and myself. It meant creating wealth beyond anything I had ever imagined. As the whispers of an IPO became concrete plans, a new idea began to form in the back of my mind. A wild, audacious, almost unthinkable idea. What if? What if, after everything, I could not only succeed but also reclaim? The IPO process was a blur of roadshows, investor meetings, regulatory hurdles. Sleep became even scarcer. The pressure was immense. Every number was scrutinized, Every word I said analyzed. I was pitching my company, my vision, my story, over and over again. And woven into that story, subtly, was the narrative of an industry giant missing a key trend, of a visionary executive leaving to build the future they ignored. I never named Sterling Corp directly in public pitches, but those in the industry knew. The story became part of the narrative, adding a layer of intrigue, of David versus Goliath. Finally, the day arrived. IPO day. Standing on the stock exchange floor, watching the ticker, the numbers flashing. The stock opened. It soared. Higher and higher. The valuation climbed into the billions. Billions. My company. The one started in my living room after I was fired. It was dizzying. Champagne was popped. Cheers erupted. My team, my investors, we celebrated. It was the culmination of years of relentless work, sacrifice, and struggle. I had not only survived, I had built an empire from the ashes of my old career. In the days following the IPO, as the market cap stabilized and the initial frenzy subsided, the idea solidified.
I had the resources now.
More than enough. I directed my financial team to quietly begin analyzing Sterling Corporation. Their financials, their market position, their ownership structure. They were a stable, profitable, but somewhat stagnant company. They hadn't innovated in years, sticking to their old reliable methods, just as I suspected they would after I left. They were ripe for a takeover. It wasn't purely revenge. Or maybe it was. It was complex. It was about justice, about proving a point on a scale that couldn't be ignored. It was about taking back control, not just of my career, but of the narrative. It was about demonstrating that talent and vision trumped entitlement and nepotism, always. It was about Sterling Corp, the place that had discarded me, becoming just another asset in my portfolio. We put together the offer. A generous one, above market value. An all-cash offer, unsolicited. Delivered quietly to the Sterling Corp board of directors. The news sent shockwaves through the industry. The startup founded by the executive they fired was making a bid to buy them out. The irony was palpable. Which brings us back to this boardroom. The day the offer is formally presented to the board. Robert is here as chairman. Michael is here, ostensibly as a key executive, though everyone in the room knows his real position is decorative. I am here, the offer laid out before me, ready to explain the terms. The room holds its breath. I begin to speak, my voice steady, calm. I outline the offer, the strategic rationale, the benefits to Sterling shareholders. I talk about synergy, about market leadership, about the future. Standard corporate talk. But beneath the surface, every word is loaded with meaning. I am talking about absorbing them, about integrating their operations into my company, about their legacy becoming a footnote in my story. As I speak, I watch Robert. His face is a roadmap of conflicting emotions. Disbelief, anger, humiliation, fear. He shifts in his seat, his hands gripping the edge of a table. He tries to interrupt once, opening his mouth, but no sound comes out. Michael looks like he might actually be sick this time. The board members watch the exchange, a mix of professional interest and morbid curiosity. I reach the end of my presentation. The numbers are undeniable. The offer is solid. There is no viable alternative for Sterling. They can accept my offer and ensure a profitable exit for their shareholders, or they can fight and likely lose, damaging the company further. So, I say, my gaze locking onto Robert's across the table. That's the offer. Sterling Corporation will become a part of my company. Effective upon shareholder and regulatory approval, I let the words hang in the air. My company, not theirs. Not Robert's.
Mine.
Robert finally finds his voice. It's a raspy whisper.
You.
You can't do this. This is impossible. I allow myself a small, cold smile. It's not impossible, Robert. The offer is right there. It's very real. And it's happening. But why? He asks, the question stripped bare of corporate pretense, raw with personal agony. Why us? After everything? Why you, Robert? I repeat, my voice quiet, but carrying through the silent room. Don't you remember? You taught me a valuable lesson. About family matters. About needing a change. About fresh perspective. About what happens when you replace someone who built something with someone who didn't. My gaze flickers to Michael, who flinches. You underestimated me, Robert. You thought cutting me loose would be the end of my story. It wasn't. It was just the beginning. You gave me the push I needed. The fire. The reason. His face contorts. He opens his mouth again, perhaps to argue, to plead, to rage. But nothing comes out. He just stares, eyes wide, as if seeing me for the first time, not as the executive he fired, but as the force that now stands ready to consume his life's work. He chokes on the reality of it, on the bitter taste of consequences, on the absolute, undeniable power I now wield over him. He is blindsided. He thought he had won when he kicked me out. He had no idea that act was merely sowing the seeds for his own destruction. This isn't karma waiting around the corner. This is karma delivered by courier, certified mail, with a signature required. And I am the courier. The plot twist is here, unfolding in real time in the stunned silence of this boardroom. Robert, the man who held all the power, who dismissed me so casually, is now utterly powerless against the very entity he created by casting me out. Michael, the golden boy who inherited my position, is watching that inheritance dissolve before his eyes, taken not by someone better, but by the person he replaced. They aren't just losing, they are losing to me. And losing everything. The board members begin to stir, their focus shifting to the business implications, the mechanics of the deal. The personal drama, for them, is secondary to the financial reality. The offer is too good to refuse. The wheels of the acquisition begin to turn. In the aftermath, the takeover proceeds quickly. Sterling Corp is absorbed, integrated. Its name slowly fades, replaced by mine, by my company's brand. Robert is removed as chairman, of course. There's no place for him in the new structure. Michael? His position evaporates. The guidance he was supposed to receive is no longer necessary. He's just another former employee looking for a job. The poetic justice isn't lost on me. He needed a place to learn? Well, he just learned the hardest lesson of his life. Entitlement is a fragile shield against real-world consequences. Walking the halls of Sterling Corp after the acquisition, the halls that were once my world, feels strange. Familiar, yet alien. My old office on the 18th floor. It's now an executive office for one of my key team members. The view is still the same, but it belongs to me now in a way it never truly did before. I don't take Robert's office on the 20th floor. It feels tainted. I have my own headquarters in a newer, taller building with a better view. The victory is immense. Undeniable. I achieved something extraordinary, something born from pain and betrayal. I built a billion-dollar company from nothing and used its power to reclaim my story. There's a deep satisfaction in that, a sense of having righted a profound wrong. But the feeling isn't purely triumphant. There's a hollow echo in the victory hall. The years of relentless work, the sacrifices, the constant struggle, they leave scars. The anger that fueled me for so long, it's gone now, replaced by
What?
a quiet weariness? A realization that achieving vengeance on this scale doesn't magically fill the void left by the initial wound. I learned that being underestimated can be your greatest weapon. I learned that true strength isn't in holding on to power granted by others, but in building your own. I learned that the most satisfying revenge isn't just seeing your enemy fall, but rising so high they become insignificant beneath you. But I also learned that success, even on this scale, doesn't erase the past. The memory of that day in Robert's office, the coldness in his eyes, it stays with me. It's a reminder of the fragility of trust, of how quickly things can change. It's a lesson etched into my bones. Sterling Corp is gone. Robert and Michael are footnotes in a story that is now mine. The view from the top is exhilarating, vast, full of new horizons. But it can also be a little lonely. The journey here was long, arduous, fueled by fire. Now that the fire has burned down, I have to find a new source of light, a new purpose beyond proving them wrong. The story of Sterling Corp is over. My story continues. And this time, I'm the one holding the pen. If this story hit close to home, if you've ever felt cast aside or had to rebuild from scratch, I'd love to hear your version. Drop a comment with where you're listening from and what time it is. And thanks for being here. Subscribing helps bring more of these stories to life.